Chapter 51, Becoming Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Someone was following him, so Chen Mo was extremely careful. Just as he started, the familiar breath imprinted a figure in his mind. He had a strong face, a beard, and a strong body. His arms were even thicker than the average person's calves. This person was Xiao Zhanghua, a talented spiritualist who entered the Tao through martial arts. Chen Mo didn't know why the other party was following him at first, but after a little thought, he knew that he had no good intentions. Although he couldn't see behind him, Chen Mo still kept a watchful eye. As long as the other party dared to attack, he would definitely send him off without hesitation. If he was exposed in the wilderness, he would be labeled a robber, and even the Guqin market would not be able to hold him accountable. However, Chen Mo pushed the cart all the way, and Xiao Zhanghua just followed from a distance, without any intention of taking action. It was not until he entered the market that the other party stopped. Is it really an escort? Chen Mo shook his head. Most likely, they want to wait until he sells all the grain and then do it on the way back. In this case, let him wait a few more days. Anyway, he is not in a hurry to go back. There are still a lot of experience waiting for him to brush at the number 123 grain station. Chen Mo pushed the grain through the sparse and deserted atrium and soon arrived at the number 123 grain station. Mei Hua, who was sitting behind the counter at the door, was extremely bored. More than a month has passed since the autumn harvest. Not to mention harvesting grain, there is not even a spiritual plant farmer on the street. The whole store and the whole market seemed very depressed, until Mei Hua looked up and saw Chen Mo coming with a cart. He raised his eyebrows and grinned and greeted him. "Friend Chen, you are finally here. The shopkeeper is looking forward to seeing you." These days, Song Yunxi has been talking about this person a lot, fearing that the other party will break his promise and stop breeding here. When the time comes, he will use a breeder with a ratio of 70 to 80, won't he lose a lot? Chen Mo smiled and waved his hand, released the cart, and walked straight into the grain shop. "Is shopkeeper Song here?" Yes, I'll go and invite him right away." After that, Mei Hua carried the grain bag from the cart to the grain shop, then patted the dirt off his body and walked to the backyard. After a while, Song Yunxi, dressed in green and elegant, walked out of the backyard. However, the moment the other party saw Chen Mo, he was stunned. His brows knitted tightly, and his expression became serious, which frightened Mei Hua beside him. After a while, he tentatively said, "Breakthrough? Lucky." Chen Mo was not going to hide it. When dealing with these businessmen, sometimes you have to show some talent, especially when your strength is low. Maybe there is a saying that Jindan and foundation building can hide their shortcomings. Qi refining is originally clumsy, so what is there to hide? Pretending to be Qi refining at the third level as Qi refining at the first level? Chen Mo thinks this is a ridiculous approach. Only when you show enough talent and potential, when you are weak, others will look up to you, and you will have a certain bargaining power. If he could not breed 33 to 1, why would Song Yunxi call him a brother? It seems that Song really misjudged him. The serious expression on Song Yunxi's face gradually faded. This time, it seems that Brother Chen is a man of accumulation and restraint. It seems that he can also run for foundation building in his lifetime. Shopkeeper Song is too kind. Hey! How can you still be so distant? We have been to the Wenxiang pavilion together. Naturally, we should call each other brothers. Song Yunxi is now really willing to make friends with the other party. If it was just a breeder, he would still have some ideas of using him, but now that the other party has broken through the first grade within a year, this talent is also worthy of his attention. Mei Hua, who was standing aside, felt a little bit nervous. Maybe Chen Mo didn't know the weight of this sentence, but he knew it clearly. Calling the shopkeeper Song a brother, as long as he doesn't offend the Niu family, won't the entire Guqinfang market be able to walk sideways? For a moment, Mei Hua was envious. At this moment, he no longer dared to underestimate the spiritual plant husband in front of him who was in charge of the spiritual field. Okay. Chen Mo bowed. Brother Song is a few years older than me, how about calling you brother? Okay. Song Yunxi was overjoyed. He looked at Mei Hua and said, "Go and prepare incense, candles, and offerings. Today, I will become brothers with brother Chen. Yes, Mei Hua hurried to the backyard. Chen Mo sat on the armchair and picked up a cup of tea to taste it. Xianren Peak. Brother, you have a good memory. The last time you drank it was a year ago, right? You can even taste it. Chen Mo smiled and said nothing. In his heart, he said, nonsense, he only knows this kind of spiritual tea. He can't even name other spiritual teas. Did my second brother not suffer from a disaster this year? Song Yunshi asked tentatively. After all, who doesn't know that Xian Peak suffered a great disaster in the past 10 years? How many spiritual plant husbands did not harvest any crops? Luckily, I managed to save a part of it. Song Yunshi looked at him and nodded secretly. The third level of qi refining, combined with Qingyang's finger, can be successful for the most part. It makes sense, of course, if he knew that Chen Mo was only at the second level of qi refining when the insect disaster occurred, he would be shocked. He would even not believe it at all. How are you going to sell it? I estimate that there are 500 to 600 kilograms. 600 kilograms. 600 kilograms means 60 taels of spiritual sand. No, I plan to transform it into seeds and sell it to Brother Song. Song Yunshi thought for a moment. Yes, the other party is a breeder, and the breeding ratio is as high as 33-1. With such skills, he can obviously earn more spiritual sand, so why not? Okay, after you and I become sworn brothers, I will let Mei Hua lead you to the breeding room. Chen Mo nodded and said, okay, but I will deposit my 600 kilograms here first, and after the 1,000 kilograms of spiritual rice agreed with brother, I will breed these I brought, okay? It's okay, but it seems that there is no difference, right? Chen Mo smiled mysteriously. Brother, be patient, you will know the reason in one day. Song Yunshi was stunned, and a bold idea emerged. He is not going to break through the qi transfer technique, right? Is it going to reach a small success? Then the seed production rate will increase again. Thinking of this, Song Yunshi was immediately delighted, and he looked at Chen Mo with more respect. This breeder is really worth making friends with. In a moment, Mei Hua came to the front yard, and the relevant work of sworn brotherhood was ready. The two walked towards the courtyard with laughter, and soon came to a spiritual platform. On the spiritual platform was an incense burner, with 3 unlit incense sticks inserted in the incense burner, and below were spiritual rice and talisman paper. Song Yunshi stepped forward, took out a stick of incense from the incense burner, and lit it with his fingertips. Soon, Chen Mo followed suit. Of course, his flame control was not as precise as Song Yunshi's. After a ceremony, Song Yunshi suddenly hugged Chen Mo's shoulders and said, Brother Chen. From now on, you and I will call each other brothers. Chapter 52 Hongyan's Good Trick. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brother Song. Chen Mo clasped his hands and said with a smile, Song Yunshi's strength is at least the 8th level of qi refining. Although he is not a powerful cultivator in Qingyang sect, he is also as powerful as a local tyrant in Guchen market. It is definitely a wise choice to rely on someone when you are weak. For Chen Mo, it is also a good thing to become sworn brothers with him. The two of them praised each other for a few words. When Chen Mo was about to speak and prepare to start breeding, Song Yunshi spoke. You and I have become brothers with different surnames today. Shouldn't we celebrate? Let's go to Wenxiang Pavilion and have a drink today. In less than 2 days. Chen Mo now wants to get the spiritual sand and spiritual stone. How can that be possible? What day is today? Song Yunshi still knows how to behave. If the two sides just became sworn brothers and asked Chen Mo to breed for him, it would be more or less suspected of exploitation, but taking Chen Mo to Wenxiang Pavilion again would have a different meaning. Okay, then I'll do as Brother Song said. The two of them laughed and walked through the Bluestone Street and came to the door of Wenxiang Pavilion. Although the entire Guchen market is a bit depressed, the business here is very good. Food and sex are also human nature. In order not to be controlled by the desire for food and taste, most cultivators will choose to take the Qigong pill. However, once the casual cultivators have resources and status, how many of them can escape the vulgarity of kissing the beautiful female cultivators? Especially these female cultivators have also practiced the dual cultivation method, and they are all beautiful. Standing outside the door is the beautiful female cultivator named Hongyan. Under the heavy makeup, she has a mature beauty. When the other party saw Song Yunshi, he immediately greeted him with a smile. Song shopkeeper, Yunru has been talking to me these days, and you are finally here. This is my sworn brother, I will treat him well later. Song Yunshi did not hide anything and directly pointed out Chen Mo's identity, who is Hongyan. From a female cultivator at the first level of qi refining who received guests when she was young, to a receptionist at the third level of qi refining who is only responsible for attracting guests now, what kind of man has she not seen? What kind of social etiquette does she not understand? Judging from her dress, the cultivator in front of her is most likely a spiritual plant husband. Song Yunshi is at least the owner of a grain store. It is said that there is a foundation building cultivator behind him. His status is far beyond what a spiritual plant husband can aspire to, but such an inconspicuous spiritual plant husband can actually make Song Yunshi call him a brother in person. The other party is definitely not as simple as he appears. Chen Daoyu. You still know how to come. Hongyan took the initiative to step forward, almost sticking to Chen Mo's body, and said with a little anger, I have heard Yushi talk about you a lot this year. After a year, the other party still remembers him. It can be seen that this female cultivator who greets guests at the door is definitely a smart person. Chen Mo laughed and followed Song Yunshi into the scent pavilion with a smile. Just like last year, the hall was still mainly for drinking and chatting. To listen to music in the brothel, one had to go to the private room upstairs. Room number 2. Two distinguished guests, Hongyan called out loudly, and then Yunru and Yushi came out in tacit understanding. One hugged the other and went upstairs. As for Hongyan, she hurried to the kitchen, and after searching for a while, she finally found Yinjing in the corner, who looked haggard and skinny, as if he would die of old age at any time. She kicked him in the chest with a very good control of strength. Kicked him over without breaking his ribs. At this time, Yinjing was like a living dead. In more than 2 years, the spiritual energy in his body had dried up, and his body had entered a state of decline. He could die at any time. He had already accepted his fate and even thought about dying, but the desire for life made him unable to make up his mind. Go, your friend is here, why don't you go and serve him some wine? Friend? I have a friend. Pa. Hongyan stepped on Yin Zheng's face and said coldly, I'm just referring to him. What qualifications do you have to be his friend? Why don't you get out of here? A figure emerged. It was the figure who didn't hesitate to seduce the old woman. Chen Mo. He's not dead. Why don't you go now? Yinjing gritted his teeth and walked out with the wine in his hand trembling. He is in this today, all thanks to the other party. He hated Wenxiang Pavilion and the female cultivator named Hongyan, but he hated his former neighbor the most. Why? Why did he live so well and come to Wenxiang Pavilion to drink wine and sleep with female cultivators? And he can only be a dog here. Yinjing thought that he was already a living dead and would no longer have any emotions, but he didn't expect that the moment he saw Chen Mo, the seeds of anger hidden in his heart broke out again. He held the tray, biting his lower lip with his teeth, staring at the other person with turbid eyes. What are you doing? Song Yunshi said in a low voice. He was obviously very dissatisfied with the behavior of this old man. Chen Mo frowned and looked at the other person. His face was a little familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was for a while. Put it down, get out. Yinjing. Chen Mo recognized him. Why don't you die? Puff. Before Yinjing finished speaking, a long whip was swung from behind him, quickly wrapped around his neck, and directly lifted him up. Then, Hongyan came out with a cold face. Looking for death. The long whip tightened more and more. Yinjing's brain was rapidly congested, and his hands were at a loss holding the whip, trying to pull it away. However, with his current appearance, is it possible? Hee. Save. Save. Snap. A crisp sound rang out, and Yinjing's neck was broken, and he died instantly. Hongyan threw the body away, and then changed her face to a flattering smile. Sorry, I accidentally let a dead dog disturb your interest. Accidentally. All this was concocted by Hongyan. Or, since she met Chen Mo last year, she had arranged this scene today. The reason why Qingyang was kept alive until now is to play such a play. In Hongyan's opinion, what do men like most? Nothing more than strength, status and women. Looking at people who used to have the same status as you, but are now not as successful as you, that kind of pleasure is not something that ordinary women can give. Chen Mo roughly saw Hongyan's means. He looked at Song Yunshi and asked, "May I buy Miss Hongyan a drink?" Song Yunshi is also a smart person. How could he not understand if he could fight with Hongyan? Brother Chen. This depends on your ability. Hongyan hasn't sat down to pay respect to guests for 10 years, and I can't even invite her. How can I do that? Hongyan rolled her eyes at the other party, casually threw the long whip to Yushi beside her, and took the initiative to sit next to Chen Mo. She picked up the wine glass and gestured. The two of them touched and drank it all. This operation gave Song Yunshi enough face. Outside the door, someone collected Qingyang's body. Inside the door, they pushed and exchanged cups. Compared with Yunru and Yushi, Hongyan's age is naturally not advantageous, but the experience and charm of a mature woman make her more attractive. That night, Song Yunshi still hugged Yunru into the inner room. Chen Mo and Hongyan drank and talked all night. Chapter 53 48 Pounds of Seeds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The red wine is very good. In other words, after becoming a monk, as long as you don't want to get drunk, you can't get drunk. Furthermore, spiritual wine is not like the strong wine in the common world, and it doesn't matter if the cow drinks it. This is all brewed with spiritual rice, and every cup is priceless. When Song Yunshi got dressed and came out, Chen Mo and Hongyan were still sober, talking and laughing. That night, Hongyan told many interesting stories about Wenxiang Pavilion, while Chen Mo randomly told some poignant stories such as Dayu buries flowers and Liang Zhu turns into a butterfly. After hearing this, Hongyan wiped away her tears and drank a glass of wine. You two shouldn't have been chatting here all night, right? Song Yunshi's eyes widened, obviously not expecting it. We have come to Wenxiang Pavilion, but we are just sitting and chatting. He believed that with his reputation, Hongyan would not refuse to accompany Chen Mo Yunyu. So what happened in front of him? Miss Hong is really a thoughtful person. Chen Mo stood up with a smile, picked up the wine and offered another toast to the other party. Hongyan looked at him with a look of resentment. The slave family is so amused by you. After finishing speaking, he murmured softly, it turns out that there are so many poignant love stories in the mortal world. I really want to see them. There will be a chance. Then Master Chen will accompany me. Nature. Chen Mo responded with a smile. How many of the words spoken on the scene are true? However, after a night of chatting, Chen Mo really felt that the other party was a wonderful person. He has a very clear view of human nature and sophistication. It even provided him with many unique insights. Of course, Hongyan also said it. When this time passes, Chen Mo will be given a big gift. The three female cultivators from Wenxiang Pavilion escorted Song Yunshi and Chen Mo to the door until their backs disappeared. Yushi, you have been in contact with him for one night, but can you still recall what kind of person he is? Hongyan stopped and stood in front of Wenxiang Pavilion. Yushi thought for a while. Sister Hong, it was a year ago. I can't remember clearly, but I always feel that he is different from those ordinary spiritual husbands. In what way is it different? Hongyan asked with a flirtatious look. The other party didn't hear it at first, but soon understood. Even though she was used to Fengyu, she was still a little shy when it came to encountering pornographic jokes. Ha! Hongyan laughed loudly, and suddenly her face became stern. Song Yunshi, an old fox, it's really not easy for him to fall in love with someone. That on the way back to number 1, 2, and 3 grain station, when they were about to get home, Song Yunshi suddenly said, Brother, I have been thinking about something for a long time, and I still feel like I need to remind you. Brother, please speak. That woman Hongyan is not an ordinary woman. You still have to be careful when you come into contact with her. Chen Mo nodded. He saw it too. Qingyang's death was a play performed for him. Such a woman is indeed difficult to handle. Thank you, brother, keep this in mind. Song Yinshi smiled and hugged his shoulders, and whispered, but it is said that her kung fu is absolutely top-notch. What kind of kung fu? Chen Mo pretended not to know. What do you think? Haha, that they both burst out laughing at the same time. Mei Hua heard the boss's laughter and rushed out to greet him. After enjoying it, it's finally time to get down to business. Chen Mo followed Song Yunshi to the breeding room. Under the dim oil lamp, there were several piles of spiritual rice that had been prepared. Brother Chen. Thank you for your hard work these 2 days. It doesn't matter. Just treat it as practice. Chen Mo held a handful of spiritual rice and began to perform the chi crossing technique. There is so much spiritual rice to give him experience, and spiritual sand to earn, why not? Chi crossing skill +1. Chi crossing skill +1. As the spiritual rice continues to be consumed, the experience of the chi crossing technique is also growing rapidly. It already had 172 experience points. After consuming less than 100 kilograms of spiritual rice, this spell specially used for breeding has been upgraded. Chen Mo took a look at the talent. Breeding, blue inspire the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the children of all things, and life will be bred in them. When all things sprout, life will burst out. This method can be integrated into chi transfer spells, and the breeding success rate will increase by 100%, already combined with Duan Chi magic fusion. You can choose whether to integrate it when casting a spell. This method is upgraded, and the talent is also upgraded. 100%. Chen Mo was very excited. Unexpectedly, just the blue talent doubled the success rate. He quickly brought 10 kilograms of spiritual rice and used his breeding skills again. After a while, more than 2 tails of seeds came out of the 10 kilograms of spiritual rice. Not counting talent, the seeding rate of the chi crossing technique at the master level is about 35 to 40. Compared with the proficiency level, the improvement is not too obvious, but if you include talent, the seed production rate can be stable within 20.20 to 1. What a terrifying number this is. Chen Mo may not know, but Song Yinshi knows that only by practicing the chi crossing technique to perfection can the seed yield rate of 20 to 1 be achieved. If you were an ordinary breeder, you wouldn't be able to cultivate to great success if you didn't have tens of thousands of kilograms of spiritual rice. In the next 2 days, Chen Mo kept consuming spiritual energy and performing the chi crossing technique. Song Yunshi was not stingy at all. He provided all the spiritual sand consumed in the past 2 days. From the first 100 pounds, 3 pounds of seeds were produced. The last 900 kilograms actually jumped to 45 kilograms. The only regret is that originally about 10 kilograms of spiritual rice can provide 4 points of experience in the chi crossing technique, but after mastering it, 10 kilograms of spiritual rice can only provide 3 points of experience. 900 pounds increased his chi transfer technique by 270 points. There is still a big gap before it can be upgraded again, however, don't forget it. Chen Mo still has 600 kilograms of spiritual rice stored at the grain station. After a small success, what kind of terrifying figure will the seed production rate reach? Seeing that the time was almost up, Song Yinshi came again, and Mei Hua prepared food and wine according to the shopkeeper's request. Preparing to reward him. Entering the house, he saw Chen Mo cross-legged and recovered, so he said, "Thank you for your hard work, Brother Chen, these past 2 days. Fortunately, I have spiritual sand to recover, so I'm not tired at all." Chen Mo has long been accustomed to hard training. When I was in Lingtian, I was either farming or practicing every day. This amount of work was just a drizzle. He is still not as tired as he was from practicing flame palm. Where are you talking? Song Yunshi turned to look at Mei Hua and motioned for the other party to bring the food and wine. Brother Chen, eat something first and take a rest. Chen Mo didn't refuse, picked up a bowl of spiritual porridge and drank it in a slurp. Suddenly, feel refreshed. Brother Song, the seeds are all on the table. You can weigh them. No need to weigh it. Song Yinshi waved his hand. 1,000 kilograms of spiritual rice. I will calculate it as 35 kilograms of seeds for you, 1 tael and 5 cents per kilogram, a total of 53 taels of spiritual sand. 35 pounds? Who said it was 35 pounds? Chen Mo asked with a smile. Isn't it 35 pounds? Song Yunshi looked at the pile on the table in confusion. Mei Hua, who was behind him, stepped forward tactfully and took advantage of him. The next moment, he was dumbfounded. "What's going on?" Song Yunshi asked. Shopkeeper, it's really not 35 pounds. How many pounds?" "Yes, it's 48 pounds. What?" Chapter 54 Level 2. Xian Spiritual Rice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 48 pounds. After Song Yunshi heard this, he strode forward, took the scale from Mei Hua's hand, and started weighing himself. It wasn't until the scale above actually stopped at 48 pounds that he slowly raised his head and looked at the smiling Chen Mo beside him in disbelief. 20 to 1. Chen Mo nodded slightly. How much spiritual rice and how many pounds of seeds were clearly placed in front of the other party. There is not much use in hiding so many seeds. His 5 acres of spiritual land only requires about 1 pound and 5 taels of seeds. Therefore, sooner or later, he will have to sell them to the other party. Song Yunshi swallowed hard. What is the concept of Linghuang rice's seeding rate reaching 20:1? I am afraid that only those who have reached the Deshang Qi crossing technique can have such a high success rate. Just when Chen Mo was calculating how much spiritual sand 48 pounds of seeds was, Song Yunshi suddenly took out a package made of white satin from the storage ring. He placed the package on the table, spread it out gently, and suddenly a burst of fragrance hit his face. Chen Mo looked over and saw seeds about the size of a thumb, similar to rice. Before he could ask, Song Yunshi took the initiative and explained. This is the second-level spiritual rice, Xuan spiritual rice. It requires a second-level spiritual field or above to be planted. There are only 3 places in Xian Peak, Gushuan, Juling, and Yunhe. This kind of spiritual rice is grown in Lingtian in Fang City. Chen Mo frowned slightly, vaguely guessing what the other party meant. The yield per mu of Xian Ling rice is about 100 kilograms. If not taken care of well, the yield will drop rapidly. Song Yunshi continued to explain. Brother Chen, do you know? Generally, the second-generation disciples of Xian Peak and above eat it is the second-level Xuani rice. The first-level Linghuang rice can only be eaten by Fengshe and disciples of the third generation or below. Brother Song, what are you talking about? The other party stretched out his hand, took out a palmful of Xuani spirit rice, and continued, there are 10 kilograms in total here. I bought it for 10 taels of spirit sand. 12. Chen Mo looked at the bag of spiritual rice on the table. Linghuang rice is only 1 tael per 10 pounds, but this second-level Xuani rice is actually 10 times as much. If you plant 1 acre of Linghuang rice, you can get 200 kilograms of spiritual rice, which is worth 20 taels of spiritual sand, not counting the increase in yield. If you plant 1 acre of Xuani spiritual rice, you can get 100 kilograms of spiritual rice, which is worth 100 taels of spiritual sand. Even if the output is low, the value is there. That's right. Song Yunshi nodded. 1 acre of Xuani Lingmi requires about 1 kilogram of seeds. Can you guess the price of its seeds? Guess. Why guess? The normal price of a pound of Linghuang rice seeds is 5 taels. Chen Mo thought for a moment and said, 30 taels. Wrong. The minimum price is 50 taels. Sometimes it can even sell for 80 taels. How is that possible? Chen Mo couldn't believe it. If this is the case, who would dare to plant second-order Xuani rice when the seeds are so expensive? If you knew the breeding rate of Xuani Lingmi, you wouldn't say this. As Song Yunshi spoke, he poured a bag of spiritual rice on the table, pointed at it, and continued, Brother Chen, why don't you give it a try? Breeding? Nod. Chen Mo took a step forward and put his hand on the spiritual rice. Just when he was about to use the Qi crossing technique, Song Yunshi explained, second-level Xuani spirit rice requires at least a small degree of Qi crossing technique before it can be bred. Its breeding rate is generally. Before he finished speaking, Chen Mo pulled his hand back instantly. Xiaocheng. He is just proficient in the Qi transfer technique. The reason why the breeding rate is so high is entirely due to the influence of talent, breeding. If it is true, as the other party said, that only an accomplished person can breed, doesn't it mean that his probability of success is almost zero? What's wrong, Brother Chen? Song Yinshi was a little confused. I don't dare to try such a precious thing. Brother Chen, how can I care about this little spiritual sand? Chen Mo shook his head. What is the approximate breeding rate of a general breeder who has a small degree of qi transferring skills? 50 to 1. 50 to 1. Yes. That is to say, if you want to breed second-level Xuani spirit rice, you must at least have the qi crossing technique in the adult stage. Even so, the breeding rate is only about 30 to 40 to 1. Song Yunshi pointed out, holding the spiritual rice on the table. Brother Chen, why don't you give it a try? I see that the seeding rate of your spiritual yellow rice is 20 to 1. I must have mastered the qi crossing technique. Why not give it a try? That he really didn't expect that he would encounter a treasure. A breeder who has mastered the art of crossing qi, even if he is the peak master of Guchenfang City, he will definitely be treated as a guest. Unexpectedly, Ling Jifu, whom I met by chance, turned out to be a hidden master. No. According to what the other party said, this person does have a talent in breeding that is unmatched by ordinary people. Deshang 30 to 40 to 1. 10 pounds of spiritual rice can produce about 3 ounces. A small amount of qi crossing is 50 to 1. If you include talent, it's about 40 to 1. Chen Mo was thinking about how to maximize your own interests. After a while, he finally said, Brother Song, how about this? Xuani spiritual rice is still too precious. How about I try again after I convert the 600 kilograms of spiritual rice I brought into spiritual seeds? Of course you can, everything is according to Brother Chen. Song Yunshi agreed very simply, the other person is the breeder. What's more, he is a breeder in the Deshang realm and must be given enough respect. At this moment, Mei Hua was very smart and carried the 600 kilograms of spiritual rice that was stored in the shop. Chen Mo wanted to return the Xuani spiritual rice in the white satin bag to the other party temporarily, but Song Yunshi just waved his hand and said, leave it here. After that, he walked out without looking back. This is a trust in Chen Mo and a means to deepen the relationship between the two. After Song Yunshi and Mei Hua left, Chen Mo closed the white satin bag and put it aside together with the seeds of the spiritual yellow rice. Then, he continued his breeding, air passing technique +1. Air passing technique +1. After consuming more than 430 kilograms of spiritual rice, his air passing technique was upgraded again. Air transfer technique, minor success 1 out of 800. Breeding, purple induced the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the children of all things, and life will be nurtured in it. When all things sprout, life will burst out. This method can be integrated into the air transfer spell, and the breeding success rate will increase by 200%. It has been integrated with the air transfer technique. You can choose whether to integrate it when casting the spell. When this method is upgraded, the talent is also upgraded. 200. Looking at the panel in front of him, Chen Mo was stunned. He thought that the success rate would only increase to 150% at most, but he never expected that it would reach 200%. If talent is not counted, Linghuang rice produces 3 gene and 3 liang of seeds per 100 gene, and now it has reached 10 gene directly. That is to say, 10 to 1. What a terrifying talent. Now, Chen Mo has a hunch, even if he no longer farms, he can make a lot of money just by being a breeder, and he doesn't have to worry about not having resources to practice. However, who would think that resources are plentiful these days? A storage ring alone costs 5 low-grade spirit stones. Chapter 55, Qingyang Sect's 1 Secret, 3 Extremes, and 12 Skills. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo spent a lot of effort to transform the remaining 160 kilograms of spiritual rice into 16 kilograms of spiritual seed, including the previous 22 kilograms. A total of 38 kilograms of spiritual seeds were obtained from the 600 kilograms of spiritual rice. He left 30 kilograms, and packed the remaining 8 kilograms in small bags. He collected them himself. He still had to farm when he returned to the fields. If he could learn the first-order spiritual formation before spring, then his ripening talent can also come in handy. 8 pounds of spiritual rice could not be seen at all hidden in the loose clothes. Chen Mo is not worried that Song Yunshi will search him. After cultivating all the spiritual yellow rice, he took the white satin bag on the side and gently spread it on his hands, feeling this brand new second-order spiritual rice. Its grains are obviously fuller, and before the grain coat has faded away, the spiritual energy contained in the spiritual rice is emitted uncontrollably. Chen Mo had a hunch, that if eating Linghuang rice can replenish spiritual energy, eating this second-level Xuani spiritual rice should be able to strengthen the Dantian just like practicing cultivation. In other words, gain experience. Chen Mo's fingertips pulsed with spiritual energy, instantly cutting off the spiritual energy inside the seed, stimulating the growth of the embryo within the Xuani spiritual rice. Time passes little by little. After spending a stick of incense, the 6 kilograms of spiritual rice in his hand were transformed into 3 tails of spiritual seeds. The yield rate of first-level spiritual rice is 10 to 1, and that of second-level rice is 20 to 1, the difference is twice as much. Chen Mo put away the remaining 4 kilograms of Xuani Lingmi and prepared to take it back for his own consumption. He would definitely be reluctant to buy such a good thing, but if it was free, he would have to try it no matter what. A bowl of fragrant spiritual rice will definitely satisfy his appetite. After finishing all this, it was already noon on the third day. Chen Mo slowly walked out of the breeding room, and Mei Hua, who had been dozing at the door, suddenly woke up. He came up with a smile on his face. "Fellow Daoist Chen, please wait a moment. I'll call shopkeeper Song right now." After saying that, he wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and ran away quickly. Not long after, Song Yunshi rushed over in 3 steps and 2 steps at a time. After entering the room, his attention was not on the large pile of seeds, but directly on the white satin bag on the table. "Success." Chen Mo smiled and nodded without speaking. Song Yunshi stepped forward, took Xuani Lingmi's seeds and weighed them in his hands. 3 taels. Sure enough, it is the qi transfer technique of the Desheng stage. Make money. Making crazy money. He made up his mind to keep Chen Mo in his grain station no matter what. Chen Mo looked at the other party's excited look, and was glad that he still had a hand in reserve. If Song Yunshi knew about it, his seed production rate could be doubled, even if he wanted to pounce on him. "Brother Chen." Song Yunshi opened his palm, and the spiritual rice in his palm slowly sprinkled down. 48 kilograms of spiritual rice, based on 1 tael and 5 cents, a total of 72 taels of spiritual sand. "You're 600 kilograms. 30 pounds of seeds. 30 kilograms. This year of disaster, if nothing else goes wrong, the price of seeds will not exceed 5 taels. If purchased at the agreed price of 4 taels, the total will be 120 taels of spiritual sand." Song Yunshi calculated. In addition, Xian Yiling has just been conceived. The cost of the rice will be counted as 2 low-grade spiritual stones for you. How about it? 4 taels of spiritual sand and 1 pound of rice seeds, Chen Mo thought, was quite reasonable. Last year, the price might have doubled, but this year, the spiritual planters have suffered heavy losses, so it is naturally impossible to sell the seeds at a high price. As for Xuani Lingmi, 3 or 2 kinds of seeds, worth 15 taels of spiritual sand, the other party directly gave me 8 taels of hard work fee, which was definitely impressive. Of course, the other party knows how to behave, so Chen Mo can't appear stingy. 192 taels is 192 taels. This little thing is not considered hard work. He pushed Xuani Lingmi's seed, smiled and shook his head. Song Yunshi was stunned for a moment, then laughed heartily. "Okay. Brother Chen said so, then I will take advantage of you today." Mutual help and reciprocity. No matter who you are, it is difficult to make real friends if you just care about things. Song Yunshi stepped forward, without saying whether the other pile weighed 30 kilograms, and put them all into the storage ring, and then took out a low-grade spiritual stone and a bag of spiritual sand from it. Low-grade spiritual stone and 92 ounces of spiritual sand. Chen Mo took it heavily. Just when he was about to ask how to become a spiritual formation master, the other party asked first, "Brother Chen, I wonder what kind of skills you practice." Chen Mo was stunned. Why ask? Nourishing Qi Ju. Song Yunshi smiled and shook his head. If it were in the past, I wouldn't have brought this up, but according to my inference, Brother Chen's achievements in the future will be more than just refining Qi, so after thinking about it today, I still feel that I have to tell you. The other party's words gave Chen Mo a vague premonition. Brother Song, please speak. Qi nourishing technique is the most basic technique among all monks. Almost every Ling Jifu practices this technique. Did you know that this technique actually has flaws? Defect? That's right. If you enter the Tao using this method, you won't be able to build a foundation throughout your life. And once you reach the fourth level of Qi refining, the difficulty of cultivation will increase significantly. Brother, do you mean to let me practice other techniques? Chen Mo asked. Song Yinshi nodded seriously and looked at him with serious eyes, and this point made Chen Mo feel a little unnatural. Is the technique rare? I wonder if Brother Chen has ever been to Yunyu bookstore in Fengshe. Yunyu bookstore. Chen Mo recalled that he seemed to have seen this store, but his impression was not very deep. No. Brother Chen, I won't keep you in suspense. Song Yunshi pulled out a chair and motioned Chen Mo to sit down. On the other side, Meihua ran to serve tea and water very tactfully, and did not miss a single thing he was supposed to do. The path of cultivation is about inheritance. As early as 1,000 years ago, the Qingyang sect established a rule that no cultivator can practice the immortal sect skills without authorization, including spells. Except for the lowest level public skills, the Yangqi Ju, Flame Palm, Duqi technique, and Genjin one finger you have learned all belong to this category. As for high-grade skills and spells, you must go to the Yunyu bookstore in every market to buy them. If you want to buy them, you must swear a heart demon oath not to pass them on without authorization. So, as long as it is in this area, as long as the Qingyang sect does not fall, this rule will continue. Chen Mo understood. This is naked monopoly. Monopolizing the skills is equivalent to monopolizing the path to promotion. Unless they are disciples within the immortal sect, other casual cultivators can practice them if they want. Flower spirit sand, flower spirit stone. For casual cultivators who are already unable to make ends meet, this is another heavy expense and price. Brother Song, which skill do you think I should practice? Song Yinshi picked up the water cup on the table and drank it all. Qingyang sect has a unique 3 extreme 12 skills. I suggest Brother Chen start with the cheapest 12 skills. 12 skills? Yes. Among the 12 skills, only 2 skills do not require spiritual roots. One is Huaishan Yangqi Gong and the other is Tianlong Gong. Both of these skills can be cultivated to the foundation building stage, but the price of such general skills is very high. How much spiritual sand is needed? Chen Mo asked tentatively. Spiritual sand? Song Yinshi smiled bitterly and shook his head. 5 low-grade spiritual stones. That it's unexpected that the recommendation has reached the second round. Thank you for your support. Chapter 56, Outline of the First Level Spiritual Array. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing this price, Chen Mo was instantly silent. 5 low-grade spirit stones, according to his current ability, need at least 2 to 3 years to accumulate, and this is not counting daily expenses. At this time, he finally understood why it is difficult for spiritual plant husbands to break through the 4th level of Qi refining, and ordinary casual cultivators never have the chance to build a foundation. Talent is one aspect, but resources are also extremely important. Wealth, dharma, friends and land. Wealth always comes first. Brother Chen. Seeing that the other party's expression was a little unnatural, Song Yinshi spoke again. 5 low-grade spirit stones are also a considerable amount for me. How about this? Chen Mo looked at him, and saw him continue. This year is a disaster year. You can still save 2 low-grade spirit stones, and next year will be a good year. I'm afraid you can barely get 3. How about this? Next year, this time, if you still need spirit stones, I will lend them to you first. How about it? Lend. Chen Mo was a little surprised. This is a spirit stone. Not some spirit sand. Brother Song, I appreciate your kindness. What are you talking about? Song Yunshi pretended to be a little angry. We are brothers. Chen Mo looked at the other party and laughed for a long time. Okay. Then it's up to you. The other party is very good at dealing with people, and has a good grasp of the ways of the world. Here, as soon as I showed my great success in the art of passing air, the other party immediately threw out an irresistible condition. In this way, as long as Chen Mo's conscience is not eaten by a dog, the rest of his life will be tied to the 123rd grain station in Song Yunshi. Brother Chen, to celebrate your great success in the art of passing air, why don't we? Chen Mo suddenly raised his hand and made a gesture of no need. Brother Song, you don't have to spend money. What's the matter? I have another question. Just ask. Song Yunshi was in a very good mood, and he was muttering in his heart that as long as it was not a big deal, he would agree. Where can I find a spirit formation master? Spirit formation master. Song Yunshi's expression changed again and again, and he looked at Chen Mo suspiciously. Why are you looking for a spirit formation master? Do you want to become his disciple? Chen Mo nodded and began to explain the reasons for his thinking. The wooden house of the spirit plant husband is covered by the spirit formation, which is quite powerful. Now there is room for farming, and I wonder if I can learn a thing or two. At this moment, Song Yunshi was a little troubled. You really want to learn how to set up a formation. But setting up a formation is like refining qi and refining pills. The threshold is extremely high. As far as I know, there is only one nominal spirit formation master in the mansion of the owner of the whole Qingyang city, and this is a disciple of Xian Peak. He paused and asked, why don't you try making talismans? I can introduce you to a talisman master or two. Chen Mo smiled bitterly and shook his head. It seems that if you want to learn how to set up a formation, you must join the Qingyang sect. Song Yunshi did not comment. Is it the same even for the most basic spirit formation? Basics? You just want to learn the basic spirit formation? Yes. At this moment, Song Yunshi slapped his head. I forgot. Yunyu bookstore seems to have ancient books on formations for sale. Just like refining equipment and alchemy, they are all theories. But I have read it before, and the back of the book should record a most basic formation. It seems to be something, shadow. I remember that the back of the alchemy is recorded as the big apil. Really? But when you are at the end of your rope, you will find a way out. Unexpectedly, the answer to becoming a spirit formation master is still in Yunyu bookstore. For Chen Mo, it is not about becoming a real spirit formation master, but just mastering a spirit formation, no matter what formation it is. Brother Chen, are you free now? Of course. Then let's go now. Okay. Chen Mo didn't want to delay for a moment. With the spirit sand in hand, he had to hurry up to buy the resources needed for the next year and continue to practice hard. Qingyang city itself is not big. In addition, Yunyu bookstore was not far from the number 123 grain station, so after a few dozen steps, the two arrived. The shops outside the bookstore looked very simple, much more restrained than the Niu family shop. It was even smaller than the door lintel of Song Yunshi's shop. As soon as Chen Mo stepped in, a burst of book fragrance came towards him. Facing the door sill, there was a horizontal table made of nanmu, which stretched all the way to the wall. Behind the table were 3 rows of neatly stacked bookshelves. The ancient books on it, although there was no spiritual fluctuation, were also shining. Between the bookshelf and the horizontal table, sat an old man with beard and hair. At this moment, he was holding an ancient book and reading it carefully. Even when Chen Mo and Song Yunshi entered the door, he never looked up at them. Senior Xue, Xue Chongwu gently put down the thread-bound ancient book in his hand and asked, "What's the matter?" Chen Mo looked at the old man in front of him, giving people a feeling of unfathomable. I couldn't even feel the spiritual energy from his body, just like an ordinary old man. Maybe Song Yunshi respectfully called him senior, so his strength was probably not that simple. I remember you have an ancient book about the magic of the spiritual array. Xue Chongwu slowly stood up, took out a thumb-thick book from the bookshelf behind him, and placed it directly in front of Song Yunshi. First level spiritual array outline, 50 tales of spiritual sand. 50. Chen Mo swallowed his saliva, but didn't express it, but compared with the skills worth 5 low-grade spiritual stones, this is equivalent to free money. He reached out to take it, but as soon as his fingers touched, a ruler suddenly appeared in the old man's hand and pressed on Chen Mo's palm. Borrow 10 taels of spiritual sand once, and no more than 1 stick of incense. Shui Chongwu said seriously, he has been in Guchenfang market for so long, and he has never met anyone who dares to have bad intentions in Yinyu bookstore. This is just a reminder. Brother Chen, I suggest you spend 10 taels of spiritual sand to borrow it and see if it is what you need. If so, you can pay the remaining 40 taels and take it away. Song Yunshi made a timely suggestion. This can be regarded as taking advantage of the bookstore. Okay. Immediately, Chen Mo took out the sachet from his arms, poured 10 taels of spiritual sand from it, and handed it over. Only when the old man accepted it did he move the ruler away from the ancient book. Chen Mo couldn't wait to take it. The title page was written in small seal script outline of the first-level spiritual array. He stood in front of the counter, staring with bated breath, and began to read it. Nearly 90% of the content in the first part of the outline is about the time and place needed for the formation, as well as various opportunities, feng shui, etc. It also lists some common necessary materials in the formation. For example, the first-level spirit-gathering formation needs to be guided by spirit sand, supplemented by 4 spirit peach plants, plus some common gravel, etc. Of course, this part of the content hides all important information such as techniques and directions, so it is impossible to set up a spirit formation with this. Chen Mo flipped to the end and finally saw the basic formation mentioned by Song Yunshi, the mountain-watching bird-driving formation. Chapter 57, Purchasing Spiritual Birds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What formation? Song Yunshi asked quietly from the side. Wangshan bird-driving formation. Chen Mo replied while understanding the function of this formation. Looking at the mountain to drive away birds. Song Yunshi was stunned. He wondered if he had heard wrongly. He clearly remembered that the book he was reading seemed to be about some kind of shadow formation, not a bird-driving formation. At this moment, Shui Chongwu turned around expressionlessly, took out another almost identical ancient book from the bookshelf, and placed it on the table. Chen Mo and Song Yunshi didn't know why, until the other party said, behind this is the Wangshan photo array. Just as Song Yunshi was about to reach out and take it, the other party spoke again, borrow 12 taels of spiritual sand at a time. So dark. Chen Mo was slandering in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it. If you don't want to see it, don't show it. For him, whether it is a bird-repelling array or a photo-taking array, there is no difference. All he needs is the spiritual array as a carrier, and what really works is the talent, ripening. Just when Chen Mo was about to spend the remaining spiritual sand to purchase this compendium, Shui Chongwu slowly said, he thinks it's okay. Can I watch? You've spent some spiritual sand. At this moment, Chen Mo suddenly realized. It seems that as long as it is the compendium of the first-order spiritual formation, no matter what formations are recorded in the back, it only costs 10 taels to borrow. However, in the time it takes to burn an incense stick, unless you have a photographic memory, it is impossible to memorize all the details of any formation. If you don't look at it, it's all in vain. Anyway, it's all spiritual sand. There's still half a cup of tea. Shui Chongwu reminded him at the right moment. Chen Mo put down the book in his hand, picked up another one, and turned directly to the last formation. He originally thought that he would just browse it briefly and then abandon it. In the end, he chose the bird-repelling formation. After all, this formation was still useful to Ling Jifu, but when he saw the Wangshan photo array, his heart almost jumped out of his throat. He didn't even have time to breathe, so he closed the compendium directly, took out another 40 taels from the sachet without saying a word, and placed it directly on the counter. I want this book. Before he could finish his words, Shui Chongwu waved his hand lightly, and the spiritual sand on the table disappeared instantly. Then he sat back down without a care and continued to study the ancient book in his hand. The ancient book that looked like a treasure in Chen Mo's eyes was just a dispensable text to him, not worthy of attention at all. Brother Chen, is there anything else you want to buy? that when Song Yunshi saw him behaving like this, he thought that his wish should be fulfilled, so he was in a good mood. Chen Mo walked out of Yunyu bookstore, glanced at the sky, and said, "It's a little late. Can you stay overnight at Brother Song's place? I'll buy some bigu pills tomorrow morning and then go back to Lingtian." "Brother Chen. Brother Song has something I don't know whether to say or not." "Then, please speak." Chen Mo almost wanted to blurt out the word "don't speak." But he quickly realized that Song Yunshi was not Lan Ling, nor was he He Jiping. "You are already a breeder now, why do you still need to guard that 1/3 of an acre?" Chen Mo shook his head and said, "I have been planting for many years, and I am used to it." "Okay, it's up to you." Song Yunshi didn't force it either, but even if you pretend to be an ordinary spiritual husband, at least no one will covet you, and your safety can be guaranteed. If he really presented himself as a breeder, he would inevitably be involved in various disputes. Then there's Brother Lao Song. Chen Mo clasped his hands in fists. While the two were talking, they returned to the number 1, 2, and 3 grain station. This time, Song Yunshi did not rush in, but asked again, "You really don't want to go to Wenxiang Pavilion?" "No, let's come again when spring comes soon." Outside Guchenfang City, Xiao Zhanghua waited for 3 days. During the past 3 days, he had always stayed on the only road out of Fengshe, just for Chen Mo, who had already entered 3 days ago. "I thought that the other party would return to Lingtian in at most 2 days, but I didn't expect that it would take so long. You know, how could Mr. Lingji dare to stay in a gold-burning cave like Fengshe for a long time? The little spiritual sand I get from selling food is enough for cultivation. The longer you stay there, the higher the cost." When he thought that the resources that were about to belong to him were wasted by the other party in the market, Xiao Zhanghua felt even more cruel. At this moment, he wanted to rush directly into Fengshe and catch Chen Mo out, tell the other person, "You are going to die, stop wasting resources." Xiao Zhanghua made up his mind, if that damn boy doesn't show up tomorrow, he will enter the city. After staying up late and breeding for many days in a row, Chen Mo was exhausted physically and mentally. If he hadn't been worried about the spiritual formation master, he would have been ready to take a long nap. After sleeping, it was the next day's Chen hour. When she woke up, Meihua had already prepared towels, hot water, and even a change of clothes. However, Chen Mo just cleaned up briefly, said hello to the other party, told him not to disturb Song Yunshi, and went out. He first went to exchange for 12 bigu pills. Now, with more than 200 kilograms of spiritual rice, you don't have to eat it, but you must keep it. After purchasing the necessities, Chen Mo came to the largest and only spiritual bird breeding station in the entire city. Whether you are buying eggs to hatch yourself, buying chicks or ducks to raise, or selling mature individuals, you have to do the transaction now. It is different from the grain station. Anyone can do the business of spiritual rice, but only Xian Peak can do the business of spiritual birds and spiritual pawns. Even the owner of the temple can only run it on behalf of others. After all, these spiritual birds are directly supplied to the second-generation disciples of Xian Peak and above, just like Xuani spiritual rice. It is impossible for others to eat them. Chen Mo walked in from the tall gate with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, an unpleasant smell came to his nose. The first thought that came to his mind was, how can there be such a smell when they are spiritual birds? He endured the discomfort and walked in. Partitions separated the entire spiritual bird station into small rooms. The outermost one was for purchasing mature spiritual chickens and ducks. Chen Mo took a glance and found that these spiritual birds were completely different from the chickens and ducks in his impression, and it could even be said that there was a world of difference. Just in terms of size, a grown individual could reach his waist. I'm afraid it must be as big as 7 or 8 chickens in the mortal world. In addition, each of these spirit chickens looked extraordinary, and the spiritual energy fluctuating in their bodies was also of long history. Although they were not at the first level of qi refining, ordinary people and warriors could not be their opponents at all. I am afraid that they could easily take the opponent away with just a peck of their beaks. Even ordinary spirit breeding officials could not control them. As for the spirit ducks, they looked about the same size, but they were much more docile than the spirit chickens. Going further in, the size of the spirit birds began to get smaller and smaller, and finally Chen Mo stopped at the stall selling chicks. Chapter 58, Instant Kill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Young spiritual birds generally have yellow hair, and this is often the time when they are most likely to die young. However, for spiritual breeding officials, they can only buy spiritual birds at this stage, because of two words, cheap. Chen Mo stood outside the stall and looked inside. Cages of chicks were locked in cramped iron cages, with almost no room for movement. Even so, it was difficult to hide the proud look of these spiritual birds. Fellow Taoist, how many are you going to raise? The shopkeeper of the stall was a middle-aged man with a low realm, and looked about the same as Chen Mo. The other party held a hatchet in one hand and a chick in the other hand. Chen Mo thought about it and didn't dare to ask for too many. After all, it was the first time to raise a chick, and it would be easy to kill it if you were not careful, and then it would be a big loss. As he spoke, the shopkeeper of the stall took out an iron cage from behind him, rolled up his sleeves, and reached out to scoop up the chicks in the big cage. How could these spiritual birds allow the cultivators to catch them? All things have spirits, not to mention that they are the descendants of the Maori Star Lord. As soon as the shopkeeper's arm entered the cage, the surrounding spiritual chickens began to peck his arm with their beaks, trying to give him a fatal blow. However, at this moment, a golden ripple appeared on the middle-aged man's arm. Then, from the elbow to the fingertips, a thin layer of golden armor covered everything. Chen Mo was in a trance for a moment, and instantly remembered that he had seen this method. When buying the mysterious seeds, the casual cultivator demonstrated this method. I didn't expect that this spell would be used in such a place. While Chen Mo was thinking, the stall owner had already picked up two chicks and stuffed them into the small cage. But soon, his attention was attracted. If the other chicks were resisting and struggling, there was a chick that was attacking. Its movements were more sensitive and the frequency of pecking was also higher. Other chickens pecked once, and it could rush up and peck 3 times. Not only that, every time the shopkeeper was behind him, it could easily dodge and not let him be caught. Chen Mo suddenly became interested. Just when the shopkeeper stretched out his hand for the 4th time, ready to catch the last chick, he pointed to the spiritual chicken in the iron cage that was obviously more energetic and said, "I want this one." "Which one?" The shopkeeper lowered his head and looked at the big cage. "This one." "Oh." The other party responded, and then stretched out his palm, and the spiritual chicken that had just dodged left and right was instantly pinched by the neck. Even so, this excited little chick kept pecking at the back of the other party's hand, trying to struggle and resist, but how could it resist? In the blink of an eye, it was stuffed into the small cage. A total of 20 tails of spiritual sand. The shopkeeper stacked the small cages, took the hatchet, and said, Chen Mo was not vague. 5 tails of spiritual sand for a spiritual bird was a reasonable price, and it would not be lowered. Xian Peak's business is almost all clearly marked. He took out 20 tails of spiritual sand and handed it over. Then he carried a cage of chickens and returned to the 123rd grain station. After a few simple greetings with Song Yinshi, he pushed the cart there and walked out of the market. However, not long after he walked, a figure slowly appeared from the corner of the wall. Soon, he followed. Stealthily. Song Yinshi, who was originally planning to return to the grain shop, became alert instantly. He stepped into the shadows and followed the figure silently. In Song Yinshi's eyes, the sturdy middle-aged man was going for Chen Mo. But his little brother didn't seem to notice it. Brother Chen, I just said to persuade you not to plant that broken field anymore. You see that your enemies have targeted you. Song Yinshi, who was hiding in the dark, muttered. Since Chen Mo didn't notice it, he would do another favor. He made up his mind to wait for the strange cultivator to make a move, and when both sides were in a dilemma, he would make a move and kill the other party in one fell swoop. At that time, his little brother would be grateful for saving his life. Song Yinshi followed all the way, and finally after entering the grove, the strange cultivator made a move. He swooped down and caught up with Chen Mo, who was pushing the small pusher and walking forward at a very fast speed. He held the long knife horizontally in his hand and said, I opened this road, this tree. He is also a martial arts practitioner. Song Yinshi had climbed up the branch without knowing when. As for Chen Mo, before the other party finished speaking, a Qingyang finger instantly hit the other party's chest. how could the other party easily take the Qingyang finger of the Great Perfection period? Xiao Zhanghua was pale and terrified. He suddenly had only one thought in his mind: run. The other party was not at the second level of qi refining at all. He was at the same level as him, the third level of qi refining. Not only that, he couldn't resist the insect-repelling spell. He threw the prepared words behind him instantly, and Xiao Zhanghua turned and ran away. But, could he escape? Fellow Daoist Xiao, you've been following me all the way, it's time to rest. As soon as he said this, he struck another Qingyang finger. The next moment, the back of the opponent's head was pierced, and the person fell to the ground. On the top of the tree, Song Yunxi, who was about to take action, pulled the corner of his mouth awkwardly. He thought it would be a hero saving a beauty drama, but it turned out to be a good show. A good show that even deceived him. His little brother had already discovered the existence of the masked man, and he knew exactly who the other party was. The difference in strength between the two sides was not a little bit. The masked man was killed instantly without even making any attack. Just as Song Yunxi was about to go home, Chen Mo walked up and searched the corpse. He slapped the body with his fire palm again and again until the opponent's flesh and bones turned into ashes. During this period, at least 70% of his spiritual energy was consumed. After destroying the corpse, Chen Mo dug another pit and buried the coke in the ground. After doing all this, he pushed the cart and hummed a little song and walked back. On the cart, the 4 spiritual chickens, after witnessing Chen Mo killing people and destroying corpses, suddenly fell silent and stopped chirping. Who wouldn't feel numb after seeing this method? Good guy, including Song Yunxi. My little brother is still a ruthless character, that he has seen killing people and has killed many of them. This is the first time I have seen someone who can destroy corpses with fire palms. The scene was still too shocking. After Chen Mo left, Song Yunxi thought for a moment and then jumped down from the branch, dug out the body of Xiao Zhanghua that had just been buried, and then went straight back to Guchen Market. He did not go to his own grain station, but went to the abbey owner's house. After a while, Song Yunxi led a team of people to the scene of the incident. He pointed to a charred patch on the ground and said, "It was this blind robber who actually robbed me. Report it. I want to report it. The abbey owner must give me justice." The manager who followed him pulled the corner of his mouth. He cursed in his heart. In Guchen Market, how many people dare to mess with you, Song Yunxi? Chapter 59, Spiritual Cultivator. Strong Talent and Image Retention Formation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Mo had no idea about Xiao Zhanghua's corpse being turned over. At this moment, he had returned to his spiritual farm cabin. In 4 days, there was almost no change here, except that the water level of the spiritual pool at the door had dropped. When Chen Mo came back, He Jiping, who was not far away, still opened the door and took a look from afar. I don't know what he was thinking, but he went back to the house. It was late autumn, and the cabin, which had been uninhabited for many days, had added a bit of chilliness. Chen Mo shivered and lit the stove in the corner. When the temperature rose, the 4 little chickens curled up and stretched out. Without opening the cage, Chen Mo grabbed a handful of husks from the spiritual rice sifted from the grain bag in the corner and threw it in. The 4 little chickens immediately rushed up and pecked them all at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. Among them, the most excited spiritual chicken ate the fastest and the most. Seeing them crying for food, 20 taels of spiritual sand could not be wasted, so Chen Mo directly brought a bunch of them this time, at least 1 or 2 kilograms. Now, it was enough for them to eat. 3 of the 4 chicks finished eating and leaned aside to rest and digest, and the last one, which Chen Mo deliberately asked for, was still eating non-stop. Its stomach was like a bottomless pit. It didn't look at him until all the husks in the cage were eaten. Then, it pecked at the cage with its red beak and pointed at the wall, signaling Chen Mo to have more. So good at eating. Chen Mo was a little surprised. At this time, he vaguely realized why the stall owner didn't refuse him when he asked for this chicken just now, but looked at him with a meaningful look. So this is the problem. Yes. This chick is in a better mental state than the other chicks, but it can't resist its appetite. At present, this chicken has eaten almost as much food as the other 3 combined. Helplessly, Chen Mo grabbed another handful and threw it in. Only after these were eaten did the excited chicken stop asking for more. after feeding, Chen Mo finally had time to observe and think about the changes in his panel. Name, Chen Mo. Occupation, spiritual plant husband, unlocked, spiritual cultivator, unlocked, spiritual fisherman, unlocked. Lifespan, 32 out of 80. Cultivation, third level of Qi refining. Skill, cultivating Qi Ju, 3/300. Spiritual root. Golden spiritual root. First level 73 out of 100. Spells. Raining technique, minor success 1 out of 800. Air transfer technique, minor success 33 out of 800. Flame palm, minor success 122/800. Genjin finger, great success 1 out of 1600. Spiritual snake body skill, mastery 45 out of 400. Talents. Spiritual plant husband, increase production, purple, breeding, purple, ripening, green. Spiritual cultivator, strong, green, sure enough. After raising the spirit bird, the second profession, the spirit raising officer was also unlocked. Chen Mo focused his attention on the newly awakened talent, strong, green. All natural spirits have corresponding acupoints. Using the active art to stretch their body muscles and bones can increase their growth. Combing and massaging the spirit bird every 3 days can increase its body size by 20%. This talent requires practicing active art spells and can only be integrated after reaching the proficient level. Massage. Combing. A series of question marks appeared in Chen Mo's mind. He thought that the talent of the spirit raising officer might be similar to that of the spirit plant husband, both relying on some kind of spell to play a corresponding role. Integrating the strong talent into the active spell can explain it, but what the hell is combing and massaging the spirit bird? Doesn't he want to practice? Now there are only 4, which is easy to say, but what if there are hundreds or thousands of them in the future? Do nothing every day, just comb and massage the chickens, ducks, and even pigs. Chen Mo shuddered. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry for a moment, but crying is enough. The most urgent thing now is to buy a book of active spells to practice first. After all, I still hope that these chickens will grow into spiritual birds and exchange them for spiritual sand in the future. I believe that by then, the bigger the spiritual birds are, the better the price they will sell for. It seems that I have to go to the market again tomorrow. That the matter of the spiritual nourishment officer came to an end. Chen Mo opened the sachet that he had just looted from Xiao Zhanghua, and poured the items inside on the table. There is no need to count deliberately, just a glance, and you will know how many things there are in total. 8 tails of spiritual sand, plus 4 bigger pills. This is all the belongings of a third-level Qi refining. It's not even as good as last year's Jia Shufei. Chen Mo sighed, lamenting that the other party was really miserable. That's it? You still yell at me every day. Chen Mo muttered to himself, and he solved a problem. However, there was another problem in front of him. Xiao Zhanghua was dead. What should he do with the 10 acres of spiritual fields he contracted? If he went to find Boss Wei at this time, it would inevitably arouse his suspicion. Why did he come to ask for the contracted land as soon as someone died? Will he think that he was murdered? Of course, Chen Mo didn't know that someone had already wiped his ass for him. In fact, as long as he went, the 10 acres of spiritual fields would definitely belong to him. Chen Mo, who didn't have this information, was ready to play it safe. Everything, wait another month. After all, it is not the season for tilling the soil and sowing seeds yet. Mixing all of Xiao Zhanghua's belongings with his own spiritual sand, Chen Mo took out the outline of the first-level spiritual array with the mountain viewing shadow technique, recorded on the back. He turned directly to the last page and read carefully. This most basic array, the so-called mountain viewing shadow array, is actually a kind of illusion array. It can retain the scene in the array. As long as you don't enter the array or deliberately cast the illusion-breaking spell, you can hardly see anything unusual from the outside. The reason why this array is considered a basic array, and you don't even need to worship a spiritual array master as your teacher, and you can buy it for 50 taels of spiritual sand, is that its limitations are very large. As long as you enter the array, the so-called shadow array will break without attacking. There is no killing power or defense power at all, and the so-called illusion array can only fool ghosts. However, This array is useless to other cultivators, but for Chen Mo, it can be regarded as a divine skill at the moment. Once the image is taken, others cannot see the changes in the spiritual field from the outside. As long as he guards it and does not let other spiritual planters enter the field, then others will not know how many years of spiritual rice he has, or how many crops he grows in a year. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a divine skill. Chen Mo was excited and studied this formation carefully. This reading lasted almost a whole night. He did not put down the formation book until the chicks in the cage opened their eyes and started chirping. After grabbing a few handfuls of husks and feeding the excited chicks, Chen Mo wrapped himself in a cotton coat, opened the door, and left the house again. This time, his goal was clearer. Chapter 60 Combing the Feathers of Spiritual Birds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. During the day, Chen Mo went to the market and spent 5 taels of spiritual sand to buy a book called Active Art. Of course, this was originally a spell used to treat hidden diseases, so the price was not too expensive. The so-called hidden diseases are just a term used in the secular world. After embarking on the path of cultivation, the body is infiltrated by spiritual energy every moment, and it has become almost immune to all diseases. Perhaps only Chen Mo would be willing to spend 5 taels of spiritual sand on this most basic active art. When he returned home, the 4 little chickens were already crying for food. Chen Mo, like yesterday, fed a handful of husks and began to study and ponder this active art. There is almost no threshold to practice the basic skills. It took less than an hour for Chen Mo to roughly master the art of exploring acupuncture points and activating collaterals explained in this spell. Exploring acupuncture points, exploring acupuncture points, exploring the acupuncture points of living beings, not just limited to cultivators. After learning, you have to start practicing. Chen Mo walked into the small cage, reached out and took out a chick from it, and put it on his lap. At first, the bird was still a little uncomfortable and struggled to escape, but the moment Chen Mo's fingers stroked its fur, it instantly became obedient. The bird closed its eyes in comfort and even turned over to expose its belly. Is it so obvious? Chen Mo was very surprised. I didn't expect that a live art would be so useful. Just as he opened the panel and observed the changes in experience, the chick on his leg slowly opened its eyes and chirped. It even rubbed it with its head. It signaled Chen Mo not to stop and continue. It's time to change to the next one. Chen Mo estimated that it would take about half a cup of tea, about 5 minutes, to comb the fur once, and 2 points of experience could be added. For chicks would take 20 minutes, and 8 points of experience could be added. The time required was not too much, and the experience gained was not too little. Strong, the talent requirement is once every 3 days. Chen Mo estimated that as long as there is room for practice, it is better to comb every day, so that the active art can be improved quickly. After a while, all 3 chicks were massaged. Only the most excited and gluttonous chick Xiao Kong was left. Chen Mo has not yet identified the other 3, but this one has been named. There is no way. Every time he feeds, half of the amount is eaten by him. It is hard not to pay attention. He put his hand into the cage, and the spiritual birds that had just enjoyed the massage took the initiative to stick their heads out and rubbed against his hand, but Xiao Kong kept pecking at his palm. Chen Mo seized the opportunity, grabbed its neck, and pressed it hard on his leg in its fierce resistance. Chijiji, Chijiji, Xiao Kong resisted violently. The more you eat, the stronger you are. Chen Mo sighed, and his other hand began to comb the feathers along the acupuncture points of the spiritual chicken. Unlike the other 3 chickens, it was obviously very comfortable, but it continued to struggle on Chen Mo's legs, and its mouth kept making chi-chi and chi-chi sounds. It seemed to say, "Don't think you can buy me off by giving me a massage." Of course, Chen Mo wouldn't listen. After half a cup of tea, regardless of whether it still wanted it or not, it was thrown back into the cage. It was obvious that Xiao Kong was still a little dazed when he returned to the cage, and then he fluttered his wings and pecked at Chen Mo's head fiercely. "Won't you resist?" Chen Mo wanted to tease it, but he didn't expect that this guy seemed to understand, turned his head, and stopped looking at him very arrogantly. The task of the spiritual nurturing officer came to an end. Chen Mo continued his hard training career. Now, most of his spells have reached a small success, and after the great success, due to the realm, he can no longer glimpse the charm of Taoism between heaven and earth. so he can't make any progress. This is the case with Gung Jiniji. In addition, although functional spells such as the breathing technique and the raining technique can gain experience, they lack resources and are a bit wasteful to use out of thin air. Therefore, Chen Mo's main task at the moment is to improve his realm. He started with the lower-grade spirit stone and practiced in the wooden house for 3 consecutive days. In 3 days, the other 3 chickens, except Shao Kong, have been completely subdued by him. Chen Mo also released them from the cage and allowed them to move freely. Every time the time comes, the 3 chickens will take the initiative to rub Chen Mo's calves, indicating that he should massage. As for Shao Kong, still locked in the cage, every day, while enjoying Chen Mo's massage and combing, he raised his chicken head and was very excited. Of course, Chen Mo didn't care about these. Just raise a chicken, as long as it doesn't die, it will have to be sold in exchange for spirit sand in 2 years. On the 4th day, there was a knock on the door of Chen Mo's wooden house. He immediately stopped practicing and got up to open the door. The person who came was not someone else, but an old acquaintance, Wei Wuwei. Boss Wei. Why are you here? Chen Mo was very surprised. I have some things to deal with, and I just happened to come to your place. You should come too. Wei Wuwei looked a little tired, as if he had just experienced a long journey. Okay. Chen Mo packed up and walked out quickly. He searched around and finally found the other person in the center of Shao Zhonghua's spiritual field. Of course, he was not the only one standing there at this moment. When he got closer, he realized that He Jiping, Lan Ling, and 4 or 5 Ling Jifu whom he didn't know were also present. Chen Mo's heart suddenly trembled. I'm afraid that Shao Zhonghua's death will be revealed. Guchenfang City and Nyojia shop already knew about it, so they would send Wei Wuwei here now. However, Chen Mo acted very calmly. He destroyed the body and even buried the body in the soil. Under normal circumstances, it is impossible to find it. According to the past situation, if 1 or 2 Lingzifus died, the city would not be able to grasp it. But why did it happen this time? Soon, Wei Wuwei's words answered his doubts. There is an order from Xian Peak to order all cities and towns to inspect the spiritual fields belonging to the land to see if there are any spiritual cultivators cultivating them. It turned out to be the order from Xian Peak. Reasonable, Wei Wuwei continued. Since this year is a disaster year, Xian Peak has postponed the tax and grain taxes until next year. In order to prevent the tax from not being collected next year, we must ensure that there are people in the spiritual fields. Several Lingzifu around listened carefully. He didn't even dare to take a breath. I just walked through half of the spiritual fields around the city. There are nearly 30 acres of spiritual fields there. The responsible husband Lingji died somewhere. Now here you are, I found this 10-acre spiritual field. No one is farming. Isn't this planted by Shao Zhonghua? He Jiping muttered in a low voice. He's dead. Wei Wuwei blurted out, dead. Chen Mo frowned slightly. How did Guchenfang City know that he was dead? How many days has it been? The body was found. Wrong. Even if you find it, how can you tell it's him?